when I was asked to do this session, and I was telling my friends that I'm doing it on innovation to zero, the first reaction I got was that of confusion. Because when you innovate something, you're creating, you're changing something. But innovating to zero, no. Instead, focus on the fine print in between. Innovating challenges to zero. Innovating disruptions to zero. Innovating waste to zero. So the concept of innovating to zero was something that was popularized by Bill Gates during one of his TED Talks. And this was way back, about 14 years ago. And that was a concept that really resonated with us at the Institute, because we believe that in order to make a change, we need to start thinking about the change. We need to start understanding what is affecting our planet and how we can make small differences. So obviously, innovating to zero is not a one solution, and it's not something that will start and end immediately. No, it is small steps. It's about making tiny changes. It's about either product innovation, service innovation, business model innovation, so that you can look at innovating some of the biggest challenges to zero. Now, at the Institute, we have identified 7 priorities that we need to focus on. That include, the environment, infrastructure, education, security, human rights, economics, and healthcare. And, I think healthcare was in the limelight in the last 3 or 4 years. Of course, COVID happened, but what it did, the kind of intelligence that it brought to the forefront was countries still do not have medication. They don't have access. They don't even have clinics that they could have gone to and checked themselves for COVID. So it brought that gap out. That was a kind of intelligence. Unfortunately, we needed a pandemic to bring forth, but it created the need to, for companies to, again, innovate. How do you make medicines or healthcare accessible and affordable? So that's just, one instance. Intelligence-driven strategies, of course, you have AI, you have data analytics. They're critical, absolutely. But when it stays a strategy, the impact is negligible. It is the application of strategy that we want, and that's what we try and do also through the Institute.
So I want to make a quick comment on
this.
First, I'm going to stand on this side so I don't be in front of the slide deck. But this last paragraph, I think, is a very important one. I want to target some emphasis on that last paragraph, because I've many times articulated the fact that any sort of significant transformation in business strategy or transformation in an approach to a social economic solution has to have an intelligence backbone. Without it, it's fruitless. So applying this intelligence backbone to this innovation to zero concept, I think, is absolutely critical. The use of tools like AI and things like this, Prerna mentioned in the fact of the intelligence, the innovation to zero purpose, really talks about putting disruptions to zero and putting those sorts of things to zero as much as possible. This is where AI as a tool can help us drive those things to that level of disruption that becomes negligible in our operating environment, and therefore then helps with that transformation to the new environment that has that, addressing the sustainability issues, the homelessness issues, the food and the poverty and so forth and so on. So I think that's a critical paragraph to focus on, because it has a lot of meaning in that context.
Next slide. Okay, so how do we do this? The 7 priorities that I just mentioned, they're very overarching, and there are probably a million things that are wrong with each of those priorities. So we use a method that we call the Socratic approach, which essentially means asking questions, breaking things down so that you understand root cause, you understand what is driving behavior and what can drive behavioral changes as well. Analyze it, do research, accumulate all the intelligence you need. Now, from that intelligence that you arrive, be it data or measurements, you have to identify best practices. What can data drive? What kind of behavior can make a change? And once you do that, you amplify that message, or you help other companies or people actually implement. So we at the Institute use this approach extensively. And I think there's an example. There's, I don't know if you're familiar with Mahindra in India. It's a massive mobility company. And actually, the mobility sector, the industry, is responsible for over 25% of emissions, energy emissions in the world today. So that company, they took note of that. Then they used that data, that information, to analyze their own processes because they wanted to make a difference. Now, they found gaps in people's understanding, just awareness of the situation. So they leveraged digital, they leveraged technology to actually educate their employees. They also realized that emissions is not just from their company, it's from their entire value chain. So they decided to work with suppliers and create a green supply chain. And now they are, net zero, almost net zero waste company. And that's massive because they are a manufacturer, so you can imagine. So what they did was they used the intelligence they had, they broke it down, and then they identified what could make a change, and they actually went ahead and did it. So that's just, I think, one example. There are a million of those. But it shows that this method works. Ask those questions and identify what can change behavior.
So this Socratic process, I think, is an important point as well, because this is something I've used before extensively in my prior enterprise role that I had before SCIP. The whole aspect around this is very much in line with the competitive intelligence approach, where you keep asking why. Why is it this way? Why is it this way? Why, you ask the why 5 times, 10 times, whatever the case might be. But it's probing into the root causes of a lot of the issues that are out there, and you're able to extract, the meanings and the real reasons why things happen the way they do. So this approach, again, aligned itself very well to the competitive intelligence and intelligence thought process. So it again, overlaps very closely with the synergies between the Innovation to Zero and the intelligence methodologies.
Just wanted to add one thing. There are two emotions that people react to, which is fear and greed. So obviously, even Mahindra, what they did was, of course, they're doing it for the betterment of the planet, but there was something in it for them. There is a business reason. There was financial gain by actually reducing their emissions. And I think in the first year or so, it was close to $100,000 or so that they could save in one of their plants, in just the one of their plants. And that is financial savings. Now, if you multiply that and if you scale it, they're not only making a difference, but they're also optimizing costs. So they're innovating their waste to zero, also innovating cost inefficiencies to zero. Just wanted to add that.
Very good.
Yeah.
So this, again, I've mentioned a couple times. I'm just going to make the implicit explicit, I guess. The combined value prop between the Frost and Sullivan Institute and the SCIP overall value prop align themselves very well. Applying intelligence models, processes, tools, and methods can transform sustainability and social responsibility applications toward the development of innovation to zero methods and policies. And this is a very important point because as part of our transformation and SCIP environment, we have, and the next slide actually shows this, but I'm going to jump ahead a little bit. We actually have as one of our core value propositions. We have 9 core value propositions in the SCIP. If you go online to scip.org, to our new website, which we just announced yesterday, go online and you'll see the 9 value props, and one of them is around sustainability and social responsibility. So to get to that point, from the very first day 2 years ago, I've talked about expanding the scope of SCIP to build upon the very important foundational cornerstone of competitive intelligence and expand this into the intelligence ecosystem. You saw the video, hopefully you saw the video on my opening keynote 2 days ago, or yesterday. And that talked about how the intelligence ecosystem is now redefining this intelligence space. And SCIP wants to be a part of that to really look beyond the competitive intelligence, and look at the other forms of data-driven intelligence applications out there. COVID has taught us very clearly that organizations have completely disregarded the value of data and now are scrambling by putting in positions like chief data officer, chief intelligence officer. Those didn't exist 10 years ago. And now everybody has them. And now using AI as a tool to help develop those intelligence processes and methods and standards within the organization is becoming a very critical element. So we expanded this space in the SCIP environment, and the consortium, Betterment of People and Planet, you've heard me say that a million times, hopefully. This is all about how we're looking to, in this expanded space, apply this in this innovation to zero context by which we are looking at intelligence to drive a lot of these things to zero. So it's a complementary relationship again. So as I mentioned, SCIP's value prop, that we have a sustainability core value prop. It's one of our 9 value props on the SCIP webpage. They are centered around the data-driven intelligence usage for environmental impact, government initiatives, partnerships, empowerment, behavior advancers, mental health, things like that, social programs, as well as geographical and regional needs, i.e. the ICOE needs. Because I want to put that in there because the ICOEs are a tremendously valuable tool to pursue and develop sustainability, innovation to zero concepts within your specific regions. That's the beauty of this globalization ICOE concept that we're employing here. So the alignment of the innovation to zero principles from FSI, Frost and Sullivan Institute, with SCIP's value prop that we have as one of our 9 major value props. In these areas, utilizing ICOEs to help drive the innovation to zero context is a winning solution in my eyes. Questions, comments, before I continue on and keep talking? So as part of this innovation to zero, there's a number of different areas that we can work on. We've talked about, in the last slide about the components in the geographical and societal and behavioral and empowerment and sort of things like that. But in coming across this, there's a lot of things out there that are what I call enablers and disablers, things that will be, as I call them, undulations, bumps in the road to get to this point. The enablers are data intelligence, AI and ML, of course, awareness, innovation, leadership. These are givens, right? These are all about the intelligence, ecosystem development, understanding, and usage. However, what's very important are the disablers. And this is a lot of times based on cultural, on DNA of corporations, on the biases. No one talks about biases. How much did we hear about biases in this week's call? Did we hear about it a little bit, biases? I'm glad. I didn't sit in on all the calls, so I'm very glad. Biases is huge in all of this, especially when it comes to an innovation to zero context. Bias is critical because one person's issues may not be another person's issues, right? So the people, politics, organizational design, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera, these are areas that could possibly be deterrents or brick walls to prevent a lot of the enabling aspects to drive an intelligence-based process toward this innovation to zero. I think it's important to articulate this because too many times we go into this effort and we're assuming people are on the same page. And many times it's not, because of different reasons. Maybe just because of personal beliefs, political beliefs, all these other areas that nobody wants to talk about but are readily available in corporate and other types of applications.
So I think, alluding to the previous session also, companies see change coming, but that's all they do. They see, and then they're left wondering. But now is the time to change that because that's where we believe the Socratic approach comes in handy by asking the right questions. You see something coming, try and decipher it, try and break it down, try and identify best practices that you can implement. And I'm just going to pick up on a couple of enablers that Paul mentioned. So the first one is, of course, artificial intelligence. And there are some companies that are doing this right now. So, I don't understand why all companies are not. One company, it's a cybersecurity company. Now, they are leveraging artificial intelligence to actually innovate cybersecurity threats to zero. Artificial intelligence, in this case, of course, data, important, but it's interesting that they're trying to analyze behavior patterns. They're trying to analyze user behavior patterns, how a mouse is being clicked, or which part of the screen is being clicked, to determine whether there is a threat or not. So a company that's leveraging artificial intelligence, it's doing that, it's identifying, kind of applying it to behavior patterns. I mean, I would not have thought that. But it is trying to innovate these cybersecurity threats to zero. The other enabler that, Paul, you talked about was innovation and leadership. So I'm going to talk about human intelligence now, not just the artificial intelligence part.
Sometimes those are one and the same, the artificial and human intelligence, but that's another story, sorry.
Yes, I'm talking pure human intelligence here. That leads to innovation. So Malaysia, if you're familiar, it lost about 19% of its forest cover owing to urbanization, owing to infrastructure development. Now, forest cover, you're replacing that. Afforestation, it takes forever. But that's where I think there was a lot of information that was gathered on what it meant for the environment. It meant groundwater going down. It also meant methane emissions going up. So there is actually an architect. He's Dr. Ken Yang, and he pioneered bioclimatic design. So he innovated within architecture, science as old as architecture, but he's innovated it, and he has got inspiration from nature, and come up with buildings in Singapore, in Malaysia, that have proven that energy emissions can come down. So forest cover, okay, unfortunately destroyed, but now if we erect infrastructure that can help with reducing energy emissions, they're doing their part. So if you look at the image here, it's of a Solaris Tower in Singapore. So what they did was identify the various features in a typical building. Then they looked at what they could do to enhance those features, and they actually quantified it. So again, intelligence there. They've quantified the emissions, and if they adapt bioclimatic design, what would annual energy savings be? And this is proven. This building exists in Singapore, so if anyone's visiting, you could. But it's proven that there was a 36% energy saving. And this is it's human innovation and leveraging intelligence, data, and design. So I think, these were just a couple of examples that I wanted to give you of both artificial and human intelligence. Yeah.
I think this is a great example. We would love to get the folks in here to do a case study, maybe.
Yeah,
when we're in Singapore,
absolutely.
That would be a great idea to see the building and do a little field trip, so to speak.
Yeah. Yeah, so how can you be a change agent? If you're still here at the session, I think your journey's begun. At least I'd like to assume that you're inspired enough to start your journey to innovating to zero. Leverage the approach. So whether it's personal, company, leverage the Socratic approach. Ask those questions. Network with peers. So like Paul mentioned, we do have a bunch of visionary leaders. We have a bunch of companies that have actually started innovating to zero. So engage with them, understand their best practices as well, and see how you can leverage it in your own space. Become an influencer. That seems to be a buzzword in today's day and age, but become an influencer in the net zero space as well. On the left-hand side, you see there is tremendous opportunity. So if, again, we're vying towards the greed part of it, there is a lot of opportunity in net zero manufacturing, for example. I think the US government is giving a lot of tax credits for net zero manufacturing facilities as well. So get that information, whether it's policy or regulation driven or data, and then break it down and see how you can work with it. Take that first step.
So there's a lot of what I believe are low-hanging fruit in this space. Developing countries in Africa, for example, I think there's a tremendous opportunity to maximize, I don't want to say exploit, but to maximize the abilities to use data and intelligence to make some major improvements in an infrastructure that's wanting of insights and intelligence. So I think, that's a very easy area to address, but there's other application areas, regardless of where they might be located in the world, that I think could be ripe for improvements as well. Different application, healthcare, for example, homelessness, poverty, maybe something in the food chain, the food supply chain, the supply chain as a whole. So these are areas I think that could be addressed very easily. So to that point, I want to also contribute some things on the SCIP side around how to be a change agent, leaving this room today and leaving Barcelona with this information in your back pocket. Be a part of the value prop. SCIP's value prop, and that one foundational element out of the 9 that we have, be a part of that by putting forth your interest levels and maybe finding use cases in that space that you can also promote and develop content around. Engage in the intelligence community, regional intelligence centers of excellence. That is something I'll be saying probably every single event and workshop and webinar we do is about engage in SCIP, either in the SCIP mothership, so to speak, or hopefully in the ICOE community around the globe. We've got 19, we've got 3 in discussions right now. I'm easily going to be surpassed by 30 by next year. And those are tremendously powerful environments that you could really have an impact in the regional area that you could support, especially in this space. Charter your own intelligence initiatives around social and sustainability issues. Leverage this principle between Perna and myself, get us engaged and involved so we can help flesh out the details and drive some of the processes and methods. And of course, collaborate with companies and visionaries in that space, right? There's a lot of folks out there that are looking to do things that are going to, hey, our motto is Intelligence Consortium for the Betterment of People and Planet. That sums up, that is inherently implied in the value prop around innovation to zero.
Okay, so get involved. We're available. We have a website. We're on social media as well. So if you want to, understand a little more about the best practices, if you want to engage with some of the visionaries that, like Dr. Ken Yang and others from across the world, that is, and you want to understand from them, then please get in touch with us. And we will be engaging a lot more with SCIP. We're hopefully going to get, some of the visionaries to talk to us as well. So yeah, get involved, take that first step.
We're going to include additional affiliates into these IntelliCon events to get different perspectives and get applications and how the intelligence ecosystem is part of this whole initiative that we have planned. So FSI is a partner, very close partner. We're going to bring other intelligence affiliates into play, some of them in the healthcare and sustainability and innovation to zero space. So that'll be broadening our intelligence impact and broadening the influence, which is what our nonprofit SCIP mission is all about. Sharing the wealth and knowledge of intelligence, competitive intelligence, behaviors, processes, tools, and methods to the globe, around the globe. That's all we have.
Thank you.
Any questions?
Yeah.
Thank you. Questions or comments, thoughts? Time's up. Excellent. Thank you so much. Appreciate the time.